The jungle was alive, not with birds or animals, but with something else. The trees were tall, their leaves glowing with strange colors. Vines hung from every branch like snakes waiting to strike. The air was thick, heavy, and full of strange sounds. Deep inside this jungle, a young alien woman named Zira was running. Her silver skin was cut and bruised. Her long, glowing hair was tangled with leaves. She was barefoot, bleeding and tired, but she didn't stop. Something was chasing her. She didn't know what it was. She had only seen shadows. But the jungle whispered of danger. Every tree, every bush, even the wind seemed to say one thing: run. Zira leaped over a fallen log, breathing hard. Then suddenly, her foot caught something. Snap! She fell hard on the ground, her scream echoing through the trees. Before she could move, the vines moved. Fast. They wrapped around her arms, her legs, her waist. She screamed again, struggling, but the more she moved, the tighter they pulled. Zira tried to grab a sharp rock nearby, but the vines were too strong. They wrapped around her chest, pressing harder and harder. No, no, please, she whispered. Her voice was weak. Her vision blurred. She cried out one last time, a broken sound full of fear. Far away, a human man named Jackson Reed was walking through the jungle, scanning with a small hand device. He was an off-world engineer from Earth, here to check an old relay tower deep in the forest. His boots crunched softly over the moss. He wasn't expecting anything strange. But suddenly, he stopped. He heard something. It was faint, almost like a breeze, but it sounded like a voice, a whisper. Help. Jackson looked around. He pulled off his helmet to listen better. There it was again. A cry. He tapped his comm. Read to base, I think I heard something strange. Might be a distress call. The reply came fast. No life forms registered in that area. Could be interference. Jackson frowned. Doesn't sound like interference to me. He stood still. For a moment. He could ignore it, finish his job, and go home. That was the smart thing, but he didn't move away. He turned toward the sound. Zira was crying now. Her body was half raised in the air, tangled by vines that were pulling her toward the treetops. The vines weren't normal. They were alive, glowing slightly, responding to her fear. The more she panicked, the more they tightened. She couldn't breathe. She closed her eyes. Please. Anyone. Then she heard footsteps. Real footsteps. Slow. Careful. Heavy boots. Her eyes opened. Through the leaves, she saw a figure moving. It was tall, two-legged, armored. A human? She had only heard stories. Her people said humans were cold, dangerous, wild. But this one, he was looking at her with shock, with concern. Jackson stepped into the clearing and froze. An alien woman, young, thin, glowing with faint light, was trapped in midair, wrapped in jungle vines. Her arms were stretched above her. Her face was twisted in pain. The vines were crushing her slowly. He didn't think. He ran forward. Hold on, he shouted. Zira's eyes widened. She didn't understand his words, but she could feel the energy in his voice. Jackson pulled out his blade. He tried to cut one vine, but the blade bounced off. It didn't even scratch the surface. He cursed. These aren't normal vines. He turned to Zira. Can you understand me? She shook her head slowly, tears in her eyes. Jackson looked at the vines again. His device beeped. Warning. Contact with vines may release toxins. Do not touch. He looked at the warning, then looked at her again. He saw the fear in her eyes. He saw her lips turning blue. She didn't have much time. Forget the warning, he muttered. He dropped the blade and grabbed the vines with his bare hands. Pain shot through him instantly. His skin burned. His vision flashed white. But the vines loosened, just a little. Zira gasped. A little air returned to her lungs. He gritted his teeth. Stay with me. The vines pulled harder, fighting back. Jackson fell to one knee, gripping the vines tighter. Zara reached her hand down weakly, her fingers brushing his. The human and the alien, strangers from different worlds, were now connected by pain, and something else. A single whisper had brought him here, and that whisper might be the start of something far bigger than either of them knew. Jackson dropped to one knee, his fingers shaking. His skin burned where he had touched the vines. But he didn't pull back. The alien girl, Zira, was barely conscious now. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Her body hung limp, her glowing eyes fading. Jackson looked around. The trees were silent again, as if watching. His AI assistant mounted on his shoulder beeped. Warning, neural toxin exposure detected. Recommend immediate retreat. He ignored it. Shut up, he muttered. His heart was pounding. The vines were fighting him. Every time he loosened one, another grew tighter. It was like they were alive, thinking, reacting. Still, he didn't stop. But then the pain hit harder. Sharp, hot waves rushed through his arms, up to his chest. He gasped, grabbing his side. Damn it. I can't do this alone, he whispered. He stumbled back, breathing hard, and stared at the girl. Her breathing was slow now. Jackson stood up, stepping back into the shadows of the trees. He looked down at his hands, red and shaking. Every instinct told him to leave. She's not my problem, he told himself aloud. 5 minutes passed. He sat on a rock nearby, drinking water, watching the vines twist and move slowly around the girl. She's probably part of some local tribe, he told himself. They'll find her. It's not my mission, I came for repairs. But the truth scratched at the back of his mind. No one was coming. The vines would kill her, and no one would care. He stood again, paced, thought, then looked at her face. Even, half covered in mud and sweat, she looked young, innocent, terrified. Damn it all, he whispered again. He walked back toward her, this time slower, more focused. Jackson activated his shoulder drone. Scan the vine structure. The AI replied, analyzing. These vines respond to emotional stress. The more panic or fear sensed, the tighter they constrict. Biopsychic plant. Extremely rare. Jackson narrowed his eyes. So her fear is killing her. Yes, so was yours. He looked again at Zara. Her eyes fluttered, barely open now. A single tear rolled down her cheek. Then something changed. He noticed her chest barely rose. Her body was almost still. Too still. No, he muttered. He ran forward again. This time he didn't touch the vines right away. Instead, he knelt down beside her, right beneath where she hung. He whispered gently, Hey, listen to me. Zara's head moved, slightly. I don't know your name, he said softly. But I'm not leaving you. You're not alone. She opened her eyes just a little. He took a breath. Then slowly he placed one hand over his heart and began to breathe deeply. In, out, in, out. Zara's eyes followed the movement. He pointed to her, then to his chest. She didn't understand his words, but she understood the rhythm. Slowly, carefully. She matched his breath. The vines twitched. Jackson noticed something. The vines loosened, only slightly, but enough to matter. His drone confirmed. Emotional sync detected. Biopsychic feedback reducing tension. He reached up and carefully touched one of the vines. This time, it didn't burn him. Okay, he whispered. We're figuring this out. He reached behind his back and took out a small pulse torch, used for melting stubborn metal in machinery. Dangerous but precise. I'll cut the lower vines first, he told himself. If she falls, I catch her. He clicked the torch on. It hummed with heat. He moved toward her ankle where the vine was tightest. The torch hissed, and the vine snapped back like a struck snake. Zara gasped, but she didn't scream. She trusted him now. One by one, He cut the lower vines. Her legs dropped into his arms, shaking. Next came the waist. Then her left arm. Jackson worked quickly, sweat pouring down his neck. His hands were shaking again. Finally, only one vine remained, wrapped around her wrist and chest. She looked at him now, fully awake, and whispered something in her language. He didn't understand the words, but he understood the meaning. Thank you. He sliced the last vine. Zara fell forward, and he caught her. She was light. Too light. Her body was cold and trembling. Jackson wrapped his arms around her and sat down on the jungle floor, her head resting on his shoulder. He looked up at the trees, their glowing leaves still watching silently. She's not my problem, he said again, but this time it sounded like a lie, because now she was. Jackson sat on the jungle floor, holding Zara close as her weak breath touched his neck. Her skin was cold like rain-soaked metal. Her body shook in his arms. She looked like she hadn't eaten in days. Her silver hair clung to her face, and her fingers curled tightly into his jacket, as if she thought he might vanish too. He didn't speak, just held her. But deep down, Jackson knew something strange was happening. The vines weren't just plants. They were watching. The trees, above, they didn't sway with the wind. There was no wind, only silence. His drone hovered overhead, scanning. Warning, biopsychic energy pattern still active in the area. Vines may return. Recommend evacuation. Jackson glanced at Zara. Her eyes were open now, but barely. She didn't have the strength to walk. He sighed. Evacuation, huh? That's a good idea, but she's not going to make it far. He looked at her again. You understand me? Zara blinked slowly. She was trying. He touched his chest. Jackson, then pointed at her. She opened her mouth. Zara. Her voice was soft, broken like dried leaves. Zara, he repeated gently. He stood up slowly, lifting her in his arms. Her body was weightless, too light, like a dying bird. As he took his first step, something beneath his boot pulsed, soft and warm. He froze. Then the ground shifted. Vines. From beneath the moss, long tendrils rose silently, curling like fingers reaching from a grave. They weren't attacking. Not yet. But they were awake. Jackson took another step. The vine slithered around his foot, but didn't grab. Zara's eyes fluttered open. No, they feel us. Jackson looked down. Feel us? She nodded weakly. Fear makes them strong. He realized the gamble he had to take. They had to stay calm. Both of them. Or the jungle would finish what? It started. He looked ahead. There was a narrow path, twisting and uneven, but maybe it led to safety. Okay, he whispered. You're scared. I get it. But you have to breathe with me again. He took a long breath. Zara tried to follow, but the vines sensed her panic. One snapped up near his ankle, just a warning. Jackson stopped walking. Zara, look at me. She did. You're not alone. I'm right here. I won't let them take you. She blinked again. A single tear rolled down. Then she placed her hand over his heart, matching the rhythm. The vines paused. Step by slow step, Jackson moved forward with Zara in his arms. Every movement was measured. Every breath counted. The jungle around them seemed to lean in, curious, almost hungry. One wrong emotion, one flash of fear, and it would all be over. Suddenly, a loud growl echoed in the trees. Zara stiffened. Don't, Jackson whispered, but it was too late. The vines snapped like whips. One slammed around Jackson's leg. Another shot toward Zara's arm. Jackson twisted, falling to the ground with her shielding her body. The vines coiled around them both, but didn't squeeze. Not yet. He held her tight, whispering, Trust me. Then, against all logic, he did something insane. He let go of Zara and opened his arms. The vines moved closer, sensing weakness, but Jackson didn't flinch. He sat there, eyes closed, breathing slow and steady like a stone in the storm. Zara watched in confusion. Why wasn't he fighting? Then she understood. He was calming the jungle. He was offering peace. She placed her hand on his arm, and together, they sat silently in the center of the nightmare, breathing as one. The vines slowly uncurled. They slithered back into the ground, leaving only small pulses of light where they had touched. Jackson opened his eyes. "We're alive," he whispered. Zara smiled faintly. "You gamble big." Jackson laughed a little. "Yeah, but sometimes that's how humans win." He picked her up again, this time with steady hands. The path ahead was still dark, still dangerous, but something had changed. The jungle no longer roared. It listened, and for the first time in Zara's life, someone had listened to her too. The path ahead was narrow and silent, like a throat waiting to swallow them. Jackson moved slowly, holding Zara in his arms. She was quiet, her breathing soft, her head resting gently against his shoulder. The vines had withdrawn, for now, but the jungle wasn't done. Above them, trees twisted unnaturally. Their leaves were sharp, and their colors shifted: green, blue, red, then black. The air felt thicker with each step. The ground pulsed under his boots. "This place is alive," Jackson whispered. Zara opened her eyes. "You feel it too?" He nodded. "Like it's watching." She turned her face slightly, barely able to lift her head. "You calmed it. With breath. That's never happened before." Jackson looked down at her. "You mean no one ever tried? Just not fighting it?" She gave a weak smile. "My people scream and run or burn it. Then it grows angrier." Jackson shook his head. "Sometimes you don't need weapons, just someone who listens." Suddenly, Zara grabbed his sleeve. Her fingers were shaking. "Wait," she said, her voice low. "This part of the jungle, it's forbidden." Jackson stopped walking. "What do you mean?" Her eyes widened. "The heartvine lives here." He frowned. "Heartvine?" She nodded. "It's not like the others. It doesn't just trap you. It feeds on you. Your memories. Your soul." He looked around. The trees were different here, more twisted. Their bark had faces, not carved, grown, faces frozen in silent screams. Jackson tightened his grip on Zara. "Then let's go around." She shook her head. "There is no way around. This forest wants us to walk through. If we turn back, it will close behind us." He glanced over his shoulder and saw it was true. The path they came from was gone, replaced by thick vines and roots. They were trapped. Zara suddenly coughed, a deep, painful sound. Jackson knelt down, placing her gently against a tree trunk. Her hands were cold. "You're getting worse," he said. She looked at him, eyes full of pain. "The vines left something inside me." His jaw tightened. "What?" "Fear. That still grows." Jackson grabbed his scanner. His hands moved fast, but his voice stayed calm. "I'll figure it out." As he scanned her chest and arms, his drone beeped. Warning: residual psychic growth detected under the skin, expanding with emotional stress. Jackson swore under his breath. She didn't have much time. Then, a sound, a deep rustling, like thousands of dry leaves moving at once. Zara froze. "It's here." From the shadows ahead, a shape formed, slowly rising like mist. It wasn't a creature in the normal sense. It had no true body, just vines, dozens of them, braided together to form the illusion of a beast. Like a giant crawling made of roots and shadow, its eyes glowed orange, burning, hungry. Zara's hand found Jackson's. "It knows me." He looked at her. "You've seen this thing before?" She nodded. "When I was a child. It took my mother." The heart vine didn't charge. It didn't roar. It simply moved. Slowly. Confidently, because it knew. It fed on fear. Jackson stood between it and Zara, holding a small flare in one hand. But his other hand, still wrapped in hers? She whispered, "It will feel your fear too." Jackson stared into the orange glow. His heart beat like a drum. Then, he let go of the flare and closed his eyes. "Breathe with me," he said gently. Zara, even as pain filled her chest, copied him. Slow breath in, slow breath out. The creature stopped moving. Its glow dimmed. Jackson whispered again, "We're not afraid of you." Zara spoke in her language, old words passed down by her ancestors, words of calm, of unity. Together, their voices rose in a quiet rhythm, like a lullaby to a monster. The heart vine didn't attack. It began to unravel, vines falling away, its form melting like smoke. Zara watched, eyes wide with wonder. "It's going back to sleep," she whispered. And then, it was gone. Jackson opened his eyes. The air was lighter. Zara was crying now, but not from fear. "I've never felt safe," she whispered. "Not like this." Jackson smiled faintly. "You are now." He helped her to her feet. Their hands, still together, their breath still in sync, bound not by force but by breath, by trust. The jungle, for the first time, did not resist them. It opened a new path. The path ahead was narrow, like a secret carved between trees by the jungle itself. Jackson walked beside Zara now. She leaned on him for support, her steps slow, but steadier than before. The vines no longer snapped at their ankles. The strange trees no longer whispered. It felt peaceful. Too peaceful. Zara noticed it first. "It's quiet." Jackson looked up. No birds, no insects, no sounds at all, not even wind. "That's not good, is it?" he asked. Zara shook her head. "The jungle never sleeps. Unless it's afraid." Jackson's eyes narrowed. "Afraid of what?" She paused. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Of what's coming." The air turned colder. The trees changed again, now taller, darker, with bark that looked like black stone. Strange claw marks scarred the trunks. The moss underfoot turned dry and red, like dried blood. Jackson felt it in his gut. Something ancient was near. He asked, "You ever come this far before?" Zara didn't answer right away. Then softly, "No one has. The elders speak of a beast, something older than the vines. They called it Vorthal, the first root." Jackson frowned. "That doesn't sound friendly." "It's not," she said. "It doesn't trap you. It hunts you." Suddenly, branches snapped to the right. Both froze. Jackson pulled Zara behind him and raised his flare gun. A low growl rumbled through the trees. Then, nothing. Silence again. But Zara was trembling. Her voice cracked. "It doesn't attack from the front. It circles you. It learns how you breathe, then strikes when your heart is weakest." Jackson whispered, "Then we don't give it that chance." They moved quickly now, hand in hand. But the jungle wasn't still. Above them, something large moved through the treetops, silent and smooth. Jackson saw it just for a second. A massive shape, long like a serpent, covered in vines and thorns, no eyes, no mouth, just roots that pulsed like veins. It was following them. Zara stopped. "We can't outrun it." Jackson looked around. "We need cover." She pointed to a hollow tree nearby. "There!" They ran inside, barely making it before something crashed behind them. Boom! A tree was torn in half, shattered like glass. Jackson pressed his back against the inside wall of the tree, holding Zara close. They listened. Heavy movement, crunching branches, sniffing sounds. Then, quiet again. Zara whispered, "It smells your fear, but also your memory." Jackson blinked. Memory? It tastes your past. Your regrets. That's how it finds the weak spot. Jackson thought of the face he hadn't seen in years. A woman's voice. His sister, maybe. Before. The war. Before space. Before this life. No, he muttered. He closed his eyes, focused on the now. I won't feed it, he whispered. Not today. But Vorthal was clever. Its roots began crawling toward the hollow tree, quiet, creeping, like fingers. One root brushed Zara's foot. She gasped. Jackson acted fast. He pulled out his plasma torch and lit it. The flame hissed brightly in the dark. The root snapped back, smoking. Vorthal roared from above. It was not used to resistance. The hollow tree cracked. Bark split open as giant vines tried to crush it. Zara screamed. Jackson covered her. They were seconds from being crushed. Then Zara remembered something. Jackson, she whispered, the lullaby. He looked at her. What? The one we sang to calm the vines. Maybe it works on this too. It's made of the same jungle. Maybe part of it still remembers. Jackson didn't believe it, but he had no better idea. So they sang. Zara's voice was soft, broken, but strong. Jackson followed her rhythm. Their voices echoed strangely through the hollow tree, soft and slow, like a prayer. The crashing stopped, the roots paused. Vorthal growled again, but it didn't strike. Instead, it backed away, slowly, as if confused. Like it remembered something it didn't want to. A time before fear. Before rage. Then without warning, the jungle opened. A wall of vines parted ahead, revealing a glowing path made of crystal flowers and light. Zara gasped. It's letting us go. Jackson didn't wait. He grabbed her hand and pulled her forward. They ran into the light out of the heart of the jungle. Behind them, the vines closed again. Vorthal's growl echoed one last time, then faded. For now they were safe. But Jackson knew one thing for sure. The jungle wasn't just a forest, it was alive, and it had chosen not to kill them. But why? The glowing path led them out of the heart of danger, but not out of the jungle. Jackson held Zara's hand tightly as they moved through the tunnel of light. Strange flowers glowed at their feet, and the air smelled like ancient smoke and wet leaves. Neither of them spoke. Both were still breathing from the fear that had nearly crushed them. But as they walked, something strange began to happen. Zara's steps grew stronger. Her shoulders lifted. Her eyes, once weak and hollow, started to glow softly, Jackson noticed. You okay? Zara nodded slowly, touching her chest. It doesn't hurt anymore. He looked at her, puzzled. The vines inside you, the poison, it's gone. She looked around. The jungle took it back. The path opened into a clearing surrounded by stone pillars, cracked and covered in moss. In the center stood a giant tree, white and gold, its leaves shining like stars. Roots wrapped around broken walls, old steps, and shattered statues. Jackson stepped closer. This isn't just a clearing. This is a ruin. Zara stared, breathless. It's the temple of the first voice. He blinked. Temple? She walked slowly to the tree. Long ago, before the jungle turned wild, this place was sacred. My ancestors came here to speak with the forest. He frowned. Speak with a forest? Zara nodded. It once spoke back. She touched the trunk of the tree, and it pulsed with warm light. Jackson stepped back, unsure. Then, the entire jungle sighed. Leaves rustled. Wind circled around them. The ground hummed beneath their feet. Zara closed her eyes and began to sing. Her voice was soft but full, rising like a tide. The same lullaby they had used before. Only now it was stronger, clearer. No longer a whisper of survival, but a song of memory. The vines around the ruin stirred, but not in anger. They swayed gently like they were listening. Jackson stepped back. It felt like the jungle itself was holding its breath. Suddenly, the tree responded. A low hum came from deep within it, like a heartbeat under stone. A light opened at its base. Zara turned to Jackson. It knows me. He stepped forward, cautious. What do you mean? She placed her hand over her chest. I carry its blood. She walked toward the base of the tree where the roots had split open, revealing a soft chamber of glowing amber. Inside was something ancient, an orb floating in the air, pulsing gently with gold and green light. Zara entered alone. The orb rose and moved toward her. She whispered something in her language, and the orb answered, flashing brighter with each word. Then she turned around and walked back out, calm, steady, changed. Jackson was waiting, wide-eyed. What just happened? She looked at him and spoke clearly. The jungle knows I'm the last daughter of the first voice. Jackson was stunned. So, what, you're royalty? She smiled faintly. Not royalty, a link, a living bridge. He shook his head. No wonder it didn't kill us. Zara nodded. It tested us. It wanted to see if we could still listen, and if we could survive without violence. Jackson smirked. Barely. She looked at him seriously. You passed, Jackson. That's why it let you live. They sat near the edge of the temple, watching the stars blink through the high canopy. Above, Jackson looked at her hand resting beside his. So what happens now? Zara tilted her head. The jungle is changing. It has felt your kindness, your pain, your heart. It wants to grow, not just destroy. He nodded slowly. And you? She looked up at the sky. I was lost, afraid, dying. She smiled. But you heard my cry. A warm wind moved through the trees. Jackson felt something shift in the air, like they were no longer strangers, like the forest now saw them both as part of it. Zara leaned closer. Your world. Is it far? He looked at her. Yeah, but maybe not anymore. She reached for his hand. And the jungle didn't resist. It welcomed. The temple stood still, behind them, glowing quietly. The song had been sung, and for the first time in generations, the jungle had listened. The sky above the jungle was deep purple, filled with alien stars that blinked like memories. The temple of the first voice glowed, quietly behind them, but Zara's eyes were not on the sky. They were on him. Jackson sat beside her on a flat stone near the roots of the ancient tree, adjusting the beacon on his wrist. The signal had gone out hours ago. Help was coming. A ship would descend soon, ready, to lift him out of this wild living forest and return him to orbit. Back to stations, back to Earth. Zara said nothing. She just watched. I wasn't supposed to be here this long, Jackson said quietly. My job was just to fix a tower, upload diagnostics, get out. Zara smiled faintly. But you heard a cry. He chuckled. Yeah, and made the worst decision of my life. She raised an eyebrow. The worst one I'd ever regret not making. They sat in silence for a while. The vines didn't move. The jungle no longer whispered danger. Instead, it felt peaceful, almost protective. A sound buzzed in the distance. Jackson looked up. A blinking light streaked through the clouds. The shuttle. They're here, he said. Zara looked at him. Will you go? He sighed. I have to. Then he looked at her. Will you stay? Zara turned her gaze toward the glowing tree. I was born of this jungle. But I never belonged to it. I was always afraid, always hidden. She touched his hand gently. But with you, I felt seen. The shuttle's light grew brighter. Jackson stood and helped her to her feet. She was stronger now, no longer limping, no longer weak. The jungle had returned what it took. Zara looked around one last time. It will live without me. She took a deep breath. then looked into Jackson's eyes. But I don't want to. As the shuttle landed with a hiss, Jackson stepped forward, Zara beside him. The pilot opened the hatch and stared. "You brought someone with you?" Jackson nodded. "She's with me. But she's not human." Jackson smiled. "Doesn't matter." He looked at Zara. "Does it?" She shook her head, holding tightly to his hand. "No. What matters is who heard me when no one else did." They stepped inside. The hatch closed. Below them, the jungle didn't roar or scream. It simply watched. And then, it bloomed. For the first time in decades, wild flowers burst open across the canopy. A gift. A farewell. As the ship rose into the sky, Zara pressed her face gently against the window. Jackson stood beside her, arms crossed. She spoke softly. "Do you think your people will accept me?" He smiled. "They'll try." She nodded. "And if they don't?" He looked at her with warmth. "Then I'll remind them what it means to be human." The stars opened before them like a new beginning. Zara reached out, fingers resting against the cold glass. "I used to look up from the jungle floor and wonder what was beyond all this." Jackson turned to her. "And now?" She smiled, eyes glowing with soft silver light. "Now, I don't wonder, because I found something better than the stars." He tilted his head. "What's that?" Zara leaned closer, her forehead resting gently against his. A heart that listened. As the shuttle soared past the atmosphere, leaving the world of vines and roots far below, the jungle whispered one last breath. "Thank you," and far above, hand in hand, they began again. Together.